I never expected things to unfold the way they did, but sometimes life has a way of surprising you, even when you think everything is fine. John and I had been married for 5 years, and our relationship had always seemed strong. Or at least that's what I thought. Lately, though, things had felt off. The spark between us had faded, and I found myself feeling disconnected, even though I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened. The late nights at work, the long silences during dinner, the distance in his eyes. I just couldn't shake the feeling that we were drifting apart. But then there was Mark, John's brother. He had always been a close friend to me, and while I never thought of him in any way other than family, something started to shift. We started spending more time together. I convinced myself it was innocent, just two old friends catching up. But deep down, I knew something was changing. We shared moments that felt different from the ones I had with John, something I hadn't realized I was missing. One afternoon, John was at work, and I was alone at home. I was in the bedroom scrolling through my phone when I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't expect anyone, so I figured it was just the neighbors. But then the door opened, and there he was, Mark. At that moment, everything seemed to slow down. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but seeing Mark standing there, unexpectedly so close, felt like an invitation I hadn't been prepared for. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I forgot all about the boundaries I should have maintained. Then, without saying anything, he walked into the room, and we just stood there in silence. The space between us felt charged with something unspoken. It was like a heavy pull, a magnet drawing us closer. And before I could stop myself, he was sitting beside me on the bed. Neither of us moved, but the tension was palpable. I couldn't tell you how we ended up where we did. It happened too quickly. One moment we were talking, and the next he was kissing me. And I let it happen. For some reason, I didn't stop him. I knew it was wrong. I knew I had crossed a line, but I couldn't bring myself to pull away. The guilt didn't hit me until later, but in that moment, I couldn't think about anything except what was happening between us. That's when the door opened again. I heard he creak of the door, and before I could react, I saw John standing there in the doorway, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. He froze. I froze. The weight of the situation crashed down on me in an instant. There was no denying what he was seeing. No excuse I could give would change what had happened. John's face went pale. The hurt in his eyes was enough to make me feel like I was suffocating. I tried to speak, to apologize, to explain, but no words came out. My heart pounded and I couldn't find my voice. "John, I can explain," I whispered, but I knew it was too late. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear any of it. Without saying another word, John turned and left. He didn't look back. And that was the moment everything changed. After John stormed out of the room, I stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Mark didn't say anything either. The atmosphere in the room was thick with guilt and confusion. I wanted to explain, but I didn't know how to begin. How could I even start explaining something like this? What had just happened felt so surreal. The events leading up to this moment felt like a blur. I had convinced myself that what was happening between Mark and me was just a fleeting, harmless thing. But now that it was exposed, I could see it for what it truly was. A betrayal. Not just of my husband, but of my own integrity. I couldn't bring myself to look at Mark. The guilt was suffocating, and the shame from the look in John's eyes was overwhelming. I had never wanted to hurt him. Never wanted to hurt anyone. But now, everything I'd worked for, everything I believed in, was crumbling in an instant. Mark stood up slowly, his eyes avoiding mine. "I should go," he muttered, his voice low, almost apologetic. He was right. He needed to leave. But I couldn't even bring myself to say goodbye. What could I say? What words could possibly make this situation any better? As he walked out of the room, I heard the door click behind him. And that's when the weight of the entire situation finally hit me. I was alone. Alone with the wreckage of my choices. I had hurt John, the person I loved, the person I promised to spend my life with. And now the silence in our home was deafening. I didn't know what to do. I just sat there staring blankly at the floor, my heart in my throat. The phone in my hand buzzed and I instinctively glanced at it. There was a message from John. We need to talk. I felt my stomach drop. I knew what that meant. There was no point in hiding from it any longer. I had to face him. But I had no idea how to do that. What could I say to make him understand? Or was it even possible to make him understand? I slowly stood up, my legs shaky, and walked to the bedroom door. But before I could open it, I heard another sound. The sound of the front door opening. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It was John. He had come back. I stood there, paralyzed for a moment, unsure of what to do. I wanted to run to him, to beg him to listen, to explain myself. But how could I? After everything, how could I ask him for anything? John walked into the living room, his eyes already filled with anger and hurt. He didn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on the floor, his jaw clenched tight. He didn't say a word at first, and neither did I. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of unspoken words. "John, please," I finally whispered, my voice trembling. I don't know what to say." He turned his eyes toward me, but there was no softness in them anymore. The warmth that had once been there, the affection we shared, was gone. In its place was something colder, something darker. The look in his eyes made my stomach turn. "You don't know what to say?" he repeated, his voice low and edged with disbelief. "You think you can just stand there and say that to me?" I flinched at his words, but I didn't know how to respond. The truth was, I had no idea what to say to him. There was no apology that could undo the hurt I had caused. There were no words that could fix what was broken. "I never meant for this to happen, John," I said quietly, trying to steady my breath. "It was a mistake, a huge, terrible mistake, and I'm so, so sorry." John shook his head, his hands tightening into fists. "A mistake?" he repeated, almost as if he were mocking me. "This wasn't a mistake, Emily. A mistake is spilling coffee on the couch, or forgetting to pick up dry cleaning. This is a betrayal. You slept with my brother." "My brother, Emily. You think I can just forget that?" His voice was shaking now, and I could see the tears starting to well up in his eyes. It felt like someone had ripped my heart out and stomped on it. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the man who had stood by me, supported me, loved me. The man in front of me was someone who had been destroyed by my actions, and I couldn't fix it. I couldn't take it back. "I didn't mean to hurt you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I never wanted this to happen. I've been so distant, and I paused, trying to find the right words, but they wouldn't come. "I'm so sorry, John. I don't even know how we got here." "You don't know how we got here?" John's voice cracked as he stepped closer to me. "You've been pulling away from me for months, Emily. You've been shutting me out, and now I find you in bed with my brother? How do you think I'm supposed to feel?" His words stung, and I realized with a sinking feeling that he was right. I had pushed him away. I had allowed myself to drift from him, from everything we had built together. But I never imagined it would lead to this. I never imagined that I would make such a catastrophic mistake. "I love you, John," I said, my voice breaking. "I love you, and I never wanted to lose you. But I messed up. I messed everything up." John didn't respond right away. He just stood there staring at me, his face full of pain. I wanted to reach out to him, to hold him, and tell him that we could work through this. But I knew it was too late. The damage had already been done. "Do you even know what you've done, Emily?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've destroyed everything. Everything we had, everything we built is gone." I felt a lump form in my throat and tears spilled down my cheeks. "I'm sorry," I whispered, but it didn't feel like enough. It would never be enough. John turned away, his back to me as he walked to the door. "I can't do this anymore, Emily. I can't. I need to get away from you." He left without another word, and I was left standing there in the middle of the room, my world crashing down around me. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the empty apartment, signaling the finality of John's departure. I was left standing in the middle of our home, the place that once felt like a sanctuary, now reduced to a cold and empty shell. The weight of what I had done, of the decisions I had made, crashed over me in waves. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight and my head spun with guilt, regret, and sorrow. I couldn't believe this was happening. It felt like an out-of-body experience, as though I was watching someone else's life fall apart. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let everything slip through my fingers like this? I sank to the couch, my hands trembling as I clutched the fabric beneath me. My mind was in a blur, torn between flashes of memories with John and the undeniable reality of the situation. His words echoed in my mind. "You've destroyed everything." And he was right. Everything I had once held dear had been shattered by my own actions. There was no one to blame but myself. I thought back to all the moments when I had withdrawn from John. I had made excuses: work stress, tiredness, the routine of daily life. But deep down, I knew I had been avoiding him. I hadn't wanted to face the growing distance between us. Instead of confronting the issues we had, I let them fester. And now I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The tears came then, uncontrollable sobs that racked my body as the realization set in. I had betrayed him. I had hurt the one person who had always been there for me, the person I promised to spend my life with, to love and cherish through every challenge. And I had thrown it all away. But the pain wasn't just about losing John. It was about losing myself. I had lost sight of the person I used to be. Somewhere along the way, I had allowed my own desires, my need for comfort and connection, to cloud my judgment. I had let myself fall into a situation that I knew was wrong, and now I was left with the consequences. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number, my fingers trembling as I pressed the buttons. The phone rang, and each second felt like an eternity. I held my breath, hoping he would answer, praying that somehow we could fix this. But the call went to voicemail, and I couldn't leave a message. I knew my words would mean nothing right now. What was there to say? I couldn't erase what I had done. I couldn't undo the pain I had caused. I threw the phone on the couch beside me, feeling a wave of hopelessness wash over me. The apartment, once filled with warmth and love, now felt like a prison. I couldn't escape the guilt that clung to me like a shadow. Every corner of this place reminded me of the life I had ruined. The pictures of us on the walls, the books we had read together, the plans we had made, all of it seemed like a distant memory now. All of it seemed so far out of reach. Mark's face flashed in my mind, and a new wave of guilt hit me. What had I done to him? He was family. He had trusted me. We had crossed a line that could never be erased either. The betrayal I had felt in John's eyes, I could only imagine how Mark must be feeling. I didn't even know what to say to him. He had been just as complicit, but I couldn't bring myself to think about him in the same way I thought about John. John was my husband, my partner. I had taken an oath to him, and I had broken it. But Mark was family, someone I had known long before John and I got together. The guilt of involving him in all of this ate at me, but it wasn't the same. The person I had hurt most was John. I stared at the floor, my emotions a confusing mix of sorrow, anger, and self-loathing. Why did I do this? Why couldn't I fix it? My thoughts spiraled, each one worse than the last. I felt trapped in my own mind, in my own mistakes. There was no escape. Hours passed. I didn't even know how much time had gone by. I had just sat there on the couch, feeling like a shell of the person I once was. My mind was reeling, but I couldn't process anything. I couldn't stop thinking about John, his face, his words. He had been right to be angry, right to be hurt. He had every right to walk out of that room and leave me behind. I had done something unforgivable. But even as I sat there consumed by guilt, another thought began to creep into my mind. A thought I didn't want to face. Was this the end? Could we ever recover from this? I had to face the reality that I may never see John the same way again. Our love had been built on trust, and now that foundation had crumbled. There was nothing left for me to cling to. The life I had imagined, the future I had dreamed of, now seemed impossible. The thought of losing him completely was unbearable. I couldn't imagine a life without John. The idea of living with this guilt, knowing that I had destroyed the person I loved most, was almost too much to bear. I knew I had to make a decision, but I wasn't sure I was ready to face the consequences yet. Maybe I never would be, but I couldn't run from it forever. The guilt was my burden now, and it would follow me wherever I went. The only thing left to do was decide how to move forward. I sat there, lost in the emotional aftermath of my actions, knowing deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if there's a way to fix this. Part of me wants to believe that somehow, with time, things could get better. But another part of me knows that it may be too late for that. I've made my mistakes, and now I have to live with them. As for Mark, I don't know where we go from here either. What we did wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal. I betrayed not only John but myself too. I can't undo what happened, but I know that the only way forward is to accept the consequences of my actions and try to learn from them. I don't expect forgiveness, not from John, not from anyone. But maybe with time, I'll find a way to make peace with myself. Maybe that's the first step.